you were telling me that there was like literally a secret combination of representatives from almost every other state in the United States of America that was conspiring against Joseph Smith because they were afraid of the political and military power that he was amassing in Nauvoo. So it was like a legit conspiracy, not just a local mob, like a legit nationwide conspiracy. Am I correct?
Yes, they were afraid of him running for president.
You can actually parallel the death of Jesus Christ to the death of Joseph Smith.
The murders of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith were not random acts. They were thought out political assassinations.
How about the car in the driver's seat? I pick you up, but there's only room for me.
Missouri was sending covert operators to try and kidnap Joseph Smith. There was an anti-Mormon political party?
Yep. He found the sealed documents.
Whoa! Did Joseph Smith actually have a decent reward on his head?
Can you feel it? I bring the energy.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Ward Radio. I am your host, Cardin Ellis, and today I am joined in the studio by a super historical horde. All right, we've got Shannon Tracy in the hot seat, as well as joined via Zoom by Brian Stutzman and one Kimberly Watson Smith, who is stealing her her husband's Zoom. It says Cameron on there. So,
right.
Yeah, okay, cool. She's usurped the laptop of a loved one and now representing the family name so tastefully and well via Zoom. And we're going to be celebrating Joseph Smith's martyr. I don't know if celebrate's the right word, but we're remembering Joseph Smith. We could say celebrating his martyrdom by completely telling you all the awesome stuff you didn't know about the martyrdom that just makes him look like an even bigger alpha Chad, and I would go so far as saying proves if he didn't win the 1844 election, he would have won the 1848 election. And here to guide us on this beautiful journey, who wants to take it? Shannon, why don't you take it? You're in the actual hot seat here, my man. So tell us what's going on.
So today, my team is going to represent the conversation about taking us down from Warsaw to Carthage through the martyrdom, documenting the historical facts that we have there. And that will be performed by Brian Stutzman. And then we will then follow up with Kimberly, who is going to take us through all the documented, fascinating things that you probably have never heard about, of those who within the church who are trying to get rid of Joseph. And it's very fascinating. That's what we're going to talk about this
podcast. Who you talking about, bro? Who you talking about? Come on, you can't bake that cake without frosting it.
Well, the
names.
laws,
I want names.
Kimberly, give us a couple of names here.
William and Wilson Law, the Higbee brothers, Joseph H. Jackson.
Foster.
Okay, all right.
And Kimberly's going to expose to us the caucus of representatives from the United States that were in town plotting the demise of Joseph.
Yeah, okay. So I know you guys are going to dive in. I'm going to be able to I'm loving this, but in the pre-show, you were telling me that there was like literally a secret combination of representatives from almost every other state in the United States of America that was conspiring against Joseph Smith because they were afraid of the political and military power that he was amassing in Nauvoo. So it was like a legit conspiracy, not just a local mob, like a legit nationwide conspiracy. Am I correct?
Yes, they were afraid of him running for president and that he would be either a spoiler or win it, but the next time around he would actually had the high capability of actually winning the presidency. So
dude, okay, dive in. Just go. Just get started.
Okay,
go.
Brian, why don't you lead us off here?
Well, we'll say this week, June 27th will be the 180th anniversary of the martyrdom. Okay. Well, guess what's happening on June 27th this year? You're going to have President Biden debate Donald Trump, two presidential candidates. And Joseph Smith, 180 years earlier, was killed the same day as the debate, and he was the first presidential candidate assassinated in the history of the United States.
Yeah, most people think it was Kennedy. It was Joseph Smith.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Interesting. That's just such a wild factoid to think on. Okay. Jump right in.
So you're jumping. Let's just kind of start. It's spring, summer, early summer of 1844 in Hancock County. You've got three towns And we do have some slides. I don't know how they play in here.
Yeah, so I've got your number one slide is number 10 card, and it's got Thomas Sharp, and then goes to
Rock
White.
on. Gotcha, baby. Okay, cool. Keep going.
Okay, so you've got Nauvoo, 18 miles south is Warsaw, and then Carthage is 18 miles from both those in a triangle. And Joseph Smith, most members of the church know that there was a newspaper called the Expositor, right? It was published in early June, I believe June 7th. And on June 10th, they decided, the city council decided to destroy it. And there's quite a story there. Joseph Smith was the mayor. They ordered the town constable to go and destroy this press. It was right on Mulholland, about a block from where the current temple is.
Which was a lot more common of a thing in that day, from what I understand.
Oh, yeah, it happened to us in Missouri. It happened up and down. Here's what the deal is. The First Amendment didn't apply to cities and towns of freedom of speech. That happened in 1931. There's a Supreme Court case called Near versus Minnesota. Near versus Minnesota, and it brought the First Amendment down to city and states. So they thought that they were within the law, and so I happen to own the building right next door to where the Expositor was on Mulholland in Nauvoo. They destroyed it. People were outraged. A group of men were charged with riot. That's what they went to Carthage to face legal charges. They also riot for destroying the press. They also had a bunch of charges, but the two against Hiram and Joseph, one against Hiram and Joseph, just two people, was treason because they had declared martial law after the Expositor was destroyed. Okay, the Expositor, by the way, recounted in 1843 where Hiram and Joseph introduced plural marriage to the High Council, and they repeated that. So it's very clear if people have a question who introduced plural marriage, was it Brigham Young or Joseph Smith? It was very much Joseph Smith. It's proven in the Nauvoo Expositor. They reprinted part of Doctrine and Covenants 132 in that edition of June 7th, 1844. So they're in Carthage, Joseph and Hiram. There's a mob, two militia groups from Warsaw, one from nearby Green Plains, get up. They join together on June 27th in the morning, and they go to Golden's Point, which is kind of in the middle of this triangle. Governor Ford has left Carthage. He's in Nauvoo. He's scolding the saints. Word gets out that he might be kidnapped by the Mormons. The militia there decides maybe to go up and rescue Governor Ford from Nauvoo. And if that happens, there'd be a little civil war there, and they kill a bunch of Mormons.
Wait, rescue Governor Ford from Nauvoo?
They thought that he had been kidnapped. He had not been.
Oh,
they got wrong information. Yeah. Nauvoo Legion had been disbanded. They didn't have their arms. Okay, so that he'd be easy pickings. But while they're there, a guard from Carthage, knowing that Joseph is upstairs in the bedroom with Hiram, sends a messenger and a note to Thomas Sharp and the group of militia meeting at Golden's Point. And think of this triangle with Golden Point in the middle. That's where they're at. The note comes and he says, from Frank Worrell, the guard, he says, now's the time to do the deed. Thomas Sharp, the newspaper editor who would stand trial. Most members of the church don't know. 9 people were charged. 5 people stood trial for the murder the next year in May of 1845. He writes, now's the time to do the deed. Thomas Sharp rallies the troops, and about 130 of them go into Carthage. The rest return to Warsaw. They storm the jail, as we all know.
Do we have this note? Do we have the primary sources on all of this? Or is this all just hearsay that has been recorded in the documentation of the trial? How settled is this social science?
Okay. The documents in the trial are fascinating. Here's what happened. The trial happened in 1845. After it was done, they took all the documents and sealed it and put it in a wax type paper with flour paste, and they stored it. In the late 1960s, the Allen Oaks, present Oaks of our first presidency,
Yeah.
was a young law professor at University of Chicago. And he was wanting to research this trial. He had a business card, University of Chicago law professor. He went to Carthage knowing that it was still pretty hostile toward the church. He did not identify himself as a member of the church, but a law professor, which he was at the University of Chicago. He said he'd like to research trials in Carthage in 1845. They had no idea where to look. He spent a couple hours looking. He found the sealed documents.
Whoa. Okay.
He was the first human to open these up since they were sealed in 1845. He tells a story that he opened it up, and the first document that fell out was a note signed by John Taylor. He said the hair on the back of his head, he had a hair back, stood up. Okay.
Not so much now.
That's
Dallin
where
A
these
jokes with hair.
documents-
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. I know this is a serious and academic podcast. At the same time, I just, in living memory, do not ever remember Dallin H. Oaks with hair. So I am literally looking up right now Dallin H. Oaks with hair so that everybody in the audience can have this beautiful experience. Oh my goodness gracious, look at this. This is what Dallin H. Oaks looks like with a head of hair. Oh my gosh, look at that. He's a handsome brother.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Hey, we're not seeing it.
well, he looks actually kind of like a European assassin from like one of those Cold War movies, wouldn't you say, Shannon?
It's Woods Beast, okay.
yeah, exactly. But wow, Dallin H. Oaks with hair as a young man pulls out the sealed documentation, and there comes a letter from John Taylor. This is intriguing stuff. Why haven't they made a documentary on this? Brian Stutzman, keep going, man. Keep going.
Okay. So all the documents, he's the first one to see it, and he pulls it out on a table. He comes back. He takes 10 years of research and writing with a graduate English student at University of Chicago who's a member of the church named Marvin Hill and down at H. Oaks take 10 years and document it. And it's the groundbreaking work that came out in the early 70s, still available, called Carthage Conspiracy.
A book.
That is where they got the information from the original documents, that he was the first person to touch those documents since they were sealed in 1845.
So curious
So
to
let's
know,
get back to the story.
in 1996, I was invited to Dallin H. Oates' office, and we sat down and we examined notes. And
Did he have hair? I don't think he had hair in the 90s.
Well, he had more than he has now.
a
Very brilliant man. So he wanted to talk to me about my research about the martyrdom and also the book that I wrote. And then I brought the book up, and he signed my copy of his book, and I signed his. But he is a fascinating man to sit down and talk to. He knows so much about Carthage, and I was humbled.
And he spent 10 years researching this. So it's pretty much undisputed. He starts one of his chapters by saying, and this gets right into what Kimberly's going to tell us, the murders of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith were not random acts. They were thought out political assassinations carried on by some of the most notable men in Carthage, in Hancock County. This was very much planned out. They were afraid. And the question is why? Well, Joseph Smith had religious power. The church had economic power. They had political power. And it was growing. You could come to the United States, say, from as a new member of the church from the Great Britain,
from England or something. Yeah, okay.
And vote in 6 months. You had legal rights to vote in 6 months. So as thousands and thousands came, pretty soon they controlled Hancock County. They're controlling Western Illinois. And if they continue to grow, they could control Illinois and perhaps the Western United States at the time, because Iowa was just a territory, or at least had become maybe a state by then, but it was, right around there. So they were afraid of his political powers.
Okay, and would you say, before we toss Kimberly here, because I know she's been waiting dutifully and patiently as we all talk this cool historical thing, would you say that's the number one kind of mischaracterization of the martyrdom? Is it's kind of spoken in a modern context as though it's like a mostly peaceful protest that went bad. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like, I don't know. oftentimes we kind of rush through the story of the martyrdom and just kind of pawn it off on a mob that really didn't like Mormons because, people don't like us, and the city was growing really fast, got too big for its britches, so the local mob got angry, right? You're saying it's much deeper and bigger than that, and well planned.
I think Kimberly's going to get into that. The mob itself that actually did the deed was probably more like what you described. There was a lot of political influences by other people, but you got to remember a couple things. 2 days after the mob killed Joseph Smith, they published in the newspaper, Thomas Sharp talks about Joseph not being killed upstairs in the jail like some people on your show have said that he was. He was killed by the well. He fell out of the window, yelled, "Oh Lord my God," the Masonic cry for help, the beginning of it, and they shot him execution style by the well.
Okay. So, Brian, it's important for you to probably read what was published in June 12th, 1944 by Thomas Sharp before the martyrdom. So, yes. It's
where he calls for people.
Yes.
Is this where Charles, do you have that?
I do.
We're not seeing it.
Slide 14, and it says, "We have only to state that this is sufficient. War and extermination is inevitable. Citizens arise one and all. Can you stand by and suffer such infernal devils to rob men of their property and rights without avenging them? We have no time to commit. Every man will make his own." Comment, yeah, will make his own. "Let it be made with powder and ball." And it's not that one, slide 10. So
cool, rock on.
I mean,
Carden, are we supposed to be seeing that? Because we're not.
No, you don't have. Okay. You can't see it on your end.
So if you're saying, do we have proof? Do we have documentation of what's going on? This is proof that they were planning to do things. They were planning to kill him. Powder and ball. You can't get much more specific than that.
Thomas Sharp would also use the word exterminate.
Yes.
Now that was a dog whistle. That was a code because Governor Wilbur Boggs had signed in 1838, in October, the extermination order. The word exterminate was used to invoke terror among the church.
Yeah, it's Thomas like Sharp from the river to the sea with these Palestinian cats. You know what I'm saying?
Same type of thing.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, cool.
So after this happened, they printed in the paper how he died. July 10th, they admitted in the newspaper. Thomas Sharp said, "We're a law-abiding community, but in this circumstance, we had to take it upon ourselves." And as anybody familiar with the facts would agree that this had to be done. The murders of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith by a mob. And then in the trial, everybody knew there's a term called jury nullification, and it was used in the 1970s and 80s. Have you heard of it?
Oh, yeah.
Real quickly. And what it means for your audience, forget what the law says. If the action that has happened reflects the community's will, then the guilty should get off.
Yeah.
The people murdered Joseph Smith. The locals felt like it should happen. The jury said, "Forget what the law is, we'll nullify it." In fact, John Hayes said, basically, the closing arguments of the trial said to the jury, if you can convict these 5 people standing trial, you need to convict every man, woman, and child in the county because they felt the same way about Joseph and Hiram. Well, that's what it meant.
Well, and also the jury that was subpoenaed for that, they actually dismissed those and then created a new jury from the people that were around in the building there, and they were all part of the mob people. They were all the locals. So the jury was stacked because they threw out the first jury that whether or not they were going to be fair or not was irrelevant.
Okay, cool. So keep going. Keep it going, baby.
Well, the church told people not to go to the trial because Joseph and Hiram weren't even safe there. So why would you send your witnesses, John Taylor, Willard Richards?
Yeah.
Some people have misconstrued that. See, Carden, the majority of people went to Utah, followed Brigham Young, but those who didn't had to find a reason to explain why Brigham Young took power. And so they're throwing dirt at him, shade at him. saying, well, he must have been behind the killings. Those people that followed James Strain, those people who followed Sidney Rigdon, later William Bickerton, those people who stayed around and eventually was part of the reorganization. It's really easy to take pot shots at Brigham Young somehow being behind it because they don't want to admit what the mob did. And it's very much proven that it was a political assassination.
Okay, cool. So is that the number one misrepresentation, you think, of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith? The magnitude of it, or the fact that it was actually a political assassination and not just mob violence?
Well, I think both. I think it had repercussions nationwide, especially when the New York Herald writes, "Thus ends Mormonism." Joseph Smith said, "Thus ends Mormonism."
Dude, that is actually pretty awesome. Is there an original copy of that New York Herald somewhere that says, "Thus ends Mormonism," or no?
Not that I found, and in our historical projects we're working on, we found the quote. We know the date. I have not been able to find the original paper.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so Kimberly,
Okay.
pick up where Brian, well-hydrated Kimberly. By the way, you got to show us what you've been. You got to show us what you've been rocking. Is that a pink mason jar lid?
Right. Yeah.
Like a custom. That looks straight out of Etsy. You know what I'm saying?
I just bought it at my local grocery store.
Dude, that is, so it wasn't just like girl power pink Etsy lid.
Was just one that's screwed on that has a place to drink your water out of. That
literally looks like something Ballerina Farm would sell. I thought you had like some cool bit of merch that I was unaware of.
No.
And I would have totally copied you and given it to my wife. But anyway.
It's her adult sippy cup, so.
Yeah, it's an adult sippy cup. That's funny. Okay, so pick up where Brian left off, man. Tell us what's next. Okay,
so one thing I think I want to dispel a really big myth that I hear a lot of scholars, they like to speculate or they like to surmise and say that if Joseph Smith just hadn't destroyed that printing press, he would be alive. He would have survived the martyrdom. He never would have been martyred.
Okay.
And that was the one thing, he did wrong, is that he went and he had to, cut down free speech. And I just want to say that isn't true at all. And that Joseph Smith actually had a vision, an open vision in daylight, where the Lord showed him that if he did not destroy the printing press, that the blood of the saints would run in the streets.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Uh-huh. And that, so he holds a meeting at his house, and he gathers some of his inner circle together, and he said that, again, I'll just repeat the exact, quote here. It says, if he did not destroy the printing press, that it would cause the blood of the saints to flow in the streets, and by this was that evil destroyed. And then after the printing press was destroyed, Joseph Smith met with those that were responsible for destroying it, and he said, I told them that they had done right, and that not a hair of their head should be hurt for it. But he knew that would actually incite the mob violence to go after him and give them a reason to charge them in Carthage for a crime. And I also want to point out, too, because all of these conspiracies are intermingled, there was the political conspiracy. There was the conspiracy with his friends, with former church members, William Law, Wilson Law, the Higbee brothers, and I think his name is Joseph H. Jackson. So you have that conspiracy going on. Then you also have the Missouri government, who had been trying and threatening since 1843. They were trying to send people to Nauvoo to actually take Joseph Smith back to Missouri so they could kill him without impunity. And
wait, they were sending like in that one movie Berlin, where the Mossad guys go around and they're like trying to round up the baddies and bring them back or bring them to justice. You're saying like Missouri was sending covert operators to try and kidnap Joseph Smith in order to like fake extradite him back to Missouri?
There still was a bounty on Joseph's head for $500.
Yeah,
Missouri.
They basically said that if you can present us with Joseph's head on a platter, we'll pay you. I don't know how
It's
much.
$500.
$500.
What's
And
that
so-
equivalent to nowadays? Like, did Joseph Smith actually have a decent reward on his head? Like, let's give the guy some credit. Was it like just like $1,000 bounty? Or it's like, that ain't nothing. Or was that at least like 10, 50K?
We're probably talking $200,000. So
$200,000.
it's 500 then, but 180 years.
Yeah. All right. Rock on. Okay, keep going, Kimberly. Sorry, keep going.
Okay. So I'm leading up to the caucus that convened in Carthage, because I think this is significant as well, because so this is like 6 months leading up to that caucus in Carthage, where the 23 delegates from 26 states are convening to plan this political assassination. But we have to understand what was going on in Nauvoo and what Joseph Smith was under. So as I said before, Missouri is trying to send in their guys to get Joseph Smith back to Missouri. So Joseph Smith, he appoints 40 night guards to patrol the city at night.
Whoa.
Yeah. And these 40 night guards come into contact several times with conspirators that were moving through the city in the darkness. And one of these conspirators was William Marks. And if I could, I'll just go back here. I'm just trying to look.
Who was the stake president of Nauvoo?
Right.
Whoa, wait. Joseph Smith was getting betrayed by the stake president of the city he founded?
Yep.
Those chumps. Oh, he would have showed up on John DeLynne's show for sure. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Mormon Stories missed one there.
He would have started a podcast called William Marks the Mormon. You know what I'm saying?
You know what was really interesting is that the Laws and the Higbees, when they published the Nauvoo Expositor, they wrote they believed Joseph Smith had been a prophet. They believe it now, but he had just fallen. They believe the Book of Mormon is scripture. Those sometimes
interesting
apostates in the church are sometimes the worst.
They leave it, but they can't leave it alone.
Well, also the weird thing, that's a dicey one, because what's a scriptural example of a fallen prophet? One's not coming to my mind right now, but I'm sure there is one. But like that ends up being kind of a tricky doctrine, because sure, fallen prophets can exist, but that also becomes a convenient excuse just to not do something the prophet tells you to do.
And it was over plural marriage, the introduction of plural marriage.
Okay.
In 1843.
Which
and anybody who tells you that Brigham Young invented it is lying to you.
Yeah, well, you're just a sellout. You're just an establishment sellout, and we're going to freaking bring a bunch of people over here to tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah,
no,
well,
I'm just kidding.
It was printed in the Nauvoo Expositor, so you can't refute that. It was there. It was in print.
Okay, interesting. Well, there's a lot of crap in print that you can refute. So, continue. What were you saying, Kimberly?
Affidavits.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so William Marks, again, so these 40 night guards, they had come in contact with these conspirators throughout the night. And so William Marks, he goes to a city council meeting and he's starting to complain about these night guards, and to which Joseph Smith replied, and he said, well, we have a Judas in our midst. So he already knows who these conspirators are. And then he prints in the Millennial Star, he says, what can be the matter with these men? Speaking of President Law and President Marks, they are absolutely traitors to the church, that my remarks would produce such excitement in their minds that the traitor whom Porter Rockwell reports to me as being a correspondent with my enemies is one of my quorum.
Whoa.
So you have President Marks or President Law and William Marks conspiring with his Missouri enemies.
Wow, dude. And who was the one that was part of his quorum of the 12 apostles?
Law.
He was in the first presidency.
And he hadn't been excommunicated yet or anything like that. He was still technically what would be considered an active member or whatever.
Yep.
Now, by that time, I think he's out of the church.
Yeah, he's out of the church. And
this was in...
What?
This was around 1843.
Okay, not yet. Then.
Yeah, but 1844.
Around August 1843. So he was still... wasn't he excommunicated in 1844? Or 18...
Early.
Why did they take so long to excommunicate people back then? Like, there was folks that were like just straight up betraying Joseph Smith, like left and right, and he could have just done it back then.
Well,
like,
no, he had a council. And
there was
if
no
you
church
remember-
office building full of spineless bureaucrats to slow the process down. You know what I'm saying? Like, what?
But you need to remember that at one time Joseph was trying to get Sidney Rigdon off of his back, and he was trying to get rid of him, and the council kept saying, no, you have to leave him on. And he says, I've thrown him off. Now you've thrown him back
You've
on.
thrown him back
right.
on,
So
yeah.
he had a council, and so he wasn't always able to do exactly what he felt he should do or needed to be done. So
all right. This is only flaw. No, I'm just kidding. So, all right, keep going. Keep going,
was
Kimberly.
too nice.
Yeah,
And then
keep
I do
going.
want to point out that William Marks is the one that wrote the letter to Joseph Smith, calling him a coward and encouraging him to come back to Carthage, because Hiram and Joseph Smith, they'd actually crossed the Mississippi River and were headed to the Rocky Mountains to avoid being arrested. And it was William Marks that actually told them to come back.
Really? Now, why did Joseph Smith trust William Marks?
he didn't trust him.
If he knew he was already well, why was he even around him? If I knew somebody was doing that to me, I'd be like, screw you. Like, just be gone with you. I'm not going to be around you anymore, man.
So there was a group of people that were sent over to Joseph. They were a committee of members of the city there, and so this letter was only one thing. His wife also had a letter. So they were humiliating him and embarrassing him, saying, "You're a coward. You're just running away." So this was in front of a lot of other people who were there at the city that were saying, "Yeah, you're leaving us to the wolves. You can't just leave us. Stay here and protect us." Well, Joseph Smith knew that his best protection was to leave and let things settle down. He knew that.
They were after him specifically.
Right.
And the powder and ball quote that Shannon read was directed toward Joseph. You got to remember that in the early 1840s, they established in 1842 with Thomas Sharp and others the anti-Mormon political party. And they got more desperate in 1844 when they admitted that they couldn't arrest, like Kimberly said, they couldn't arrest them. And they were working with Missourians to possibly capture him and hang him.
There was an anti-Mormon political party?
Yep. So the two predominant parties at the time were the Whigs and the Democrats. And the people in Warsaw said, I don't care. I don't give a fig if you're a Whig. Come join our political party, the anti-Mormon political party, and we'll counter the political forces, the strength of Nauvoo and the Mormons, who were block voting, which is very common for religious groups to vote all the same way.
Yes.
Yeah, political party.
Yes.
Just think today if we had the anti-Lutheran party, or the anti-Baptist political party, even the anti-Mormon political party today, that would not really stand by.
As you start
standards.
hearing here, Justin Griffith just got the wrong people to be blaming who were plotting against him. It wasn't Brigham Young. And
your he's your arch nemesis too?
Well,
I know he's Brian's.
Yes.
I know he's Brian's, but he's your arch nemesis too, huh?
Yeah,
you have to
we just
ask-
stand for the truth.
Yes,
We just stand for the truth and call out lies when we see them.
I love how this guy just has gotten to you guys. I just love it. It's like so
So
fun
for
to
your
me.
viewers who don't know, there was a not a member, excommunicated member, made this really high production quality video movie that has some outlandish claims that somehow the murder of Joseph and Hiram, even though Joseph wasn't killed in the jail, he was killed outside by the well, but somehow he was killed inside the jail.
by John Taylor and
John
Willard
Taylor
Richards.
and Willard Richards, which absolutely
Right. And
there's no truth
orchestrated
at
by
all.
Brigham Young. So you think, okay, who's the one man who stayed by Joseph, even in Cartland, through everything, very awkward things, was Brigham Young. In fact, Joseph Smith even berated him a couple of times in Carthage, and he humbled himself and repented and stayed by Joseph Smith. There's very few men that ever would have stayed by Joseph as him. So for him to be accused is outlandish.
That would be frustrating.
When you take into account the ending here, it was unclear who was going to take over the church. Brigham Young, Sidney Rigdon almost did it before they had the debate in the Groves, where Brigham became transfigured into Joseph. A couple days before, as Brigham came in to the town, he stopped Sidney Rigdon from taking it over just by minutes. Most people don't know that story.
Wow.
A couple days before that. Why would Brigham Young have Joseph Smith murdered when he didn't know he was going to be the next, the 12 was going to take over?
Yeah, I hear you. That's a good point.
So he was out on a mission at the time.
Killed.
Yes.
So
anyway,
now, Kimberly, was Kimberly talking or were you talking? Who are we tossing back to? I don't remember.
Okay, well, I need to finish the story.
Finish the story, Kimberly.
I'm just building up to the really, really good part here.
Okay, hit it. Go, Kimberly.
Story that hardly any member of the church knows that they have to know about the martyrdom.
Okay.
Because so we're building up to before William Law is excommunicated. So in the spring of 1844, so Joseph is aware of there's a conspiracy. He knows that the Missourians are out. They're trying to extradite him. And so in the spring of 44, he's alerted by two young men. And these young men are named Dennison L. Harris and Robert Scott. And he learns from them that there is a secret movement to take his life and the lives of several leading men in the church, including Hiram Smith. And so Joseph Smith meets with these two boys, teenagers, and they attend two of these secret meetings as spies. And before going to the third meeting, Joseph Smith told them this was the last meeting he was going to let them go to, and he warned them that their blood might be shed, but if they have to die like martyrs.
Whoa, really?
So basically they were going in as spies and they were listening to this conspiracy. They were listening to the men they took oaths. They swore oaths on the Bible to take the lives of Joseph Smith. And then they were trying to force these two boys to also take the oath because they had heard the plot. And so they were worried that if they let him go before they took this oath, that they would then go and tell Joseph Smith. And these boys refused to take the oath. And so they take him down to the cellar and they're about to kill him, essentially, murder them, when by divine intervention, their lives are spared. One of the men decided that, if they kill these boys, their fathers will come looking for them. And their plot would be discovered. So they let them go. But they take these boys down in the middle of the night, down to the Mississippi River. Joseph Smith is hiding in the banks of the Mississippi River. He threatens the boys one more time. Do not tell our secret or we'll kill you. Joseph Smith hears the entire thing. And these boys are actually some of the, heroes of the martyrdom that we never hear about.
Right. So I think we need to name them. They deserve their name to be known.
I was about to say, who are these kids, man?
Dennison L. Harris.
Okay.
And Robert Scott.
And Robert Scott, yep.
Yes.
Dennison L. Harris and Robert Scott. You guys are Chads. I know it's 200 years late, but you guys are total Chads, man. That's sick. Okay, now, so I just want to make sure I got this straight. This is what you had mentioned, I believe, in our pre-show, Shannon, and now Kimberly, that this was like a blood oath where they swore on a Bible, like some kind of ritualistic thing. Keep going, Kimberly.
Yeah, so they administered this oath one by one there was over 200 people of men and women in this group. And each man was required to come to the table and to hold the Bible in his right hand. And then Brother Higby, he would say, "Are you ready?" And when the man being sworn in said yes, he would say, "You solemnly swear before God and all holy angels and these your brethren, by whom you are surrounded, that you will give your life, your liberty, your influence, and all for the destruction of Joseph Smith and his party. So help you God."
So it's a freaking creepy, reverse temple ceremony secret combination living up to every bad stereotype of a Gadianton robber. And 200 of these guys swore that oath?
Mm-hmm.
200. And
but where could 200 guys meet, though? This had to have been done, in a church? The ultimate heresy? Or what?
Most likely outside.
Oh, just outside in some field somewhere?
Well, and most likely they all aren't there at the same time. But there were 200 people who were part of this group who were plotting the demise.
Okay, and then you're also saying that the night watchers, the 40 night watchers that Joseph Smith had appointed to walk around town, had bumped into these cats. When the night watchmen bumped into these guys, like, what were they doing? Were they just like lubing up their rifles and like packing the powder balls in their muskets and like etching, Joseph Smith on the pewter balls that they were making, like Mel Gibson in The Patriot? Or were they just speaking too loud drunk about how I can't wait to shoot that Joe Smith? Like, what gave them away as conspirators to these night watchmen?
Well, it's kind of like we say there's no good deed happens after midnight. Well, in Nauvoo, it probably was like 10 o'clock. So if you're out wandering around at night, you're probably up to no good.
Wow. Okay. So he just
There was a couple of gathering areas.
Right.
If you're at the temple in Nauvoo and you look east away from the river, there was one grove, a gathering area. That's where the King Follett discourses was given, by the way. We commonly think of toward the river from the Nauvoo temple because the big Catholic school that was there for 50 years or whatever is torn down and it's a big field. There was also some meeting areas there, just from a historian standpoint.
Okay, rock on. Awesome. Okay, keep going, Kimberly.
Okay, so this is another important fact that is very significant, I believe, is because Joseph Smith actually then gives a discourse in Nauvoo, and it's called The Conspiracies in Nauvoo, where he actually tells the saints of this plot. He names the men in the plot. And he says, men are here today who are seeking my blood, and they are those who have held the priesthood and have received their washings and anointings, men who have received their endowments. Joseph Smith then testified that William Law had offered Joseph H. Jackson $500 to kill him. And then 2 men by the names of E.G. Eaton and A.B. Williams had actually signed an affidavit of those that were leading this conspiracy who had entered into this oath. And he named the men as Chauncey L. Higby, Dr. Robert D. Foster, Dr. Robert D. Foster, Mr. Joseph H. Jackson, William and Wilson Law.
Wait. So what did the Mormon people of the time then do? Just get pissed and say tisk tisk? Did they just go niceness culture like nowadays and be like, well, we just won't talk to them? Or like, were they actually like, gathering arms to defend their boy Joseph? What happened?
That's a good question. I think that for the most part, because they, the saints, they were also being threatened by the Missourians. And so they're just trying to protect themselves. So
the pansies.
We know that the laws of the Higbees were in the Hamilton house, staying. See, when Joseph went over the first night, he wasn't in the jail. That was the night of the 26th. The night of the 25th, he stayed at the hotel there in town. In Warsaw, they had the Warsaw house. In Carthage, they had the Hamilton. And this is where he gives. They're there, but some other people come, and he gives the prophecy, and you and I have talked about this prophecy of Buena Vista, where he says, do I look like the kind of man that you have heard I am? Joseph says to these people. And they said, no. And he says, you can't tell what's in my heart, but I can tell what's in your heart. You thirst for blood, and only my blood will satisfy. Yeah. Then he stops and he says, I prophesy in the name of the Lord that you will see scenes of destruction to your full satisfaction, and you will basically be caught from a cannon's mouth you know not of. And 2.5 years later, at the Battle of Santa Ana in Mexico, they get caught in friendly fire and die. 2.5 years later, Joseph Smith prophesied that they would be caught and killed by a cannon from the mouth of a cannon from sources you think not of, and it was fulfilled 100% 2.5 years later.
And ironically,
so
it was friendly
the laws and Higbees were there.
Wow.
Kimberly, I got to point 2 things out. Joseph Smith announces there, you read it, these people had received their endowments in the temple. There are some people, including one former guest on Card and Show, that goes around today saying Brigham Young invented the endowment after Joseph died. We have proof here that the endowment was given by Joseph. Where was it given? Upstairs, originally in the red brick store. You can go there and see a reproduction of that now.
And this speech that Joseph Smith gave called what was it called, Kimberly? The Conspiracies in Nauvoo?
Conspiracies in Nauvoo.
Okay, and so Joseph Smith himself is saying in this speech, The Conspiracies of Nauvoo, that these men have received the priesthood and they've received the endowment, which is basically him documenting himself that he had given the endowment of the priesthood to other people as well, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so keep going. I make sure I get this all in my head, the timeline right,
So this is where the conspirators in Nauvoo, this is where they intersect then with basically the law, state of Illinois, is because now William Law is, he's basically been exposed. So then what does he do? They plot to use the Nauvoo expositor to expose Joseph Smith for his secret plur marriages. Because why is he doing that? Well, plur marriage is against the law in Illinois. And he's trying to incite his enemies to violence. So this is why he
so true. They called the Missourian. They asked for the city charter to be revoked in the expositor. They call on mobs to attack the city.
Really?
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. And so that's the reason why on June 7th, 1844, the first and only issue of the Nauvoo expositor is issued, which vilifies Joseph Smith, and they attack the Nauvoo charter because they know if they can repeal the Nauvoo charter, that the mobs can basically come in and do what they want. They can murder every single Mormon if they want. And when Joseph Smith ordered it to be destroyed, Francis M. Higbee, who was one of the conspirators, he threatened the saints on June 10th, 1844, in a city council meeting. And he said, if they lay their hands upon it, the printing press, or break it, they may date their downfall from that very hour. And in 10 days, there will not be a Mormon left in Nauvoo.
Wow.
So does it sound like we don't have any evidence of an outside, effort going on here?
Yeah, that's hardcore. Are there copies of the Nauvoo expositor still? Mm-hmm. Just like original first copies? Are they worth because how, for example, I think one of the ultimate relics of the modern church is a first edition Book of Mormon, right? That's, I guess, kind of one of the cool, more holier grails of the modern church. Do anti-Mormons collect
There's some expositors. There was a reprint. In fact, I'm looking right at one across the way here now. I've got a reprint for what we're doing in Nauvoo as well as
you can buy them there in Nauvoo. So
you can.
Yeah,
they're $2 for a reprint.
No, but the first editions though are
there's a few out there, around? But they're very rare. I haven't seen an original.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. All right, so keep going.
Yeah, and so then we obviously know that Joseph Smith is then charged with a riot. Joseph Smith and the city council were charged with riot, and they were acquitted by the Justice of the Peace, Daniel H. Wells, and that's recorded in the history of the church. But then we have Thomas Ford, who we know is the governor of Illinois. He pronounced himself unsatisfied with those legal procedures and insisted that the prophet go to be tried in the very hotbed of the cruelest opposition in the state, which was Carthage. And Thomas Ford even said in a letter, one of the reasons he sent Joseph Smith to Carthage was to placate the masses. And that is actually very significant as well, because if you can actually parallel the death of Jesus Christ to the death of Joseph Smith. And that's one of the parallels, is that we know that Jesus Christ was brought before the governor, the Roman government, essentially, and he was acquitted. Jesus Christ was.
Yeah, so there's something I think that you just walked over that most people don't understand is Joseph Smith stood trial and then was there, and they used the habeas corpus to get it moved to Nauvoo. Yeah. And then he was acquitted. So there's really no need for them to be anyplace else except for Governor Ford insisted that he had a do-over in Carthage.
Oh, interesting. And then he kind of pulled the Pontius Pilate that I'm just trying to placate the masses here.
Right.
Exactly. I wash my hands of this. Okay.
Exactly.
Yep. And then on June 20th, 1844, so we're moving closer to the martyrdom, Joseph Smith, he forwards to President John Tyler in Washington the affidavits that spelled out the threats of an utter extermination from both Missouri and Illinois. And he appealed to the President of the United States to render that protection which the Constitution guarantees in the case of insurrection and rebellion, and nothing was done in response.
Dude, what a beta.
I think that's one of the greatest tragedies of the whole martyrdom is that under the Joseph Smith is the greatest advocate for the Constitution, and he wasn't afforded that protection.
Wow, because of a governor named Thomas Ford, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So interestingly enough, Thomas Ford ends up trying to write his memoirs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, whatever happened to this guy?
Well, he ends up trying to sell it. Nobody would buy his book. He actually dies in poverty of a pretty sad death. So, not saying that
Well,
God
was he
punished
just
him.
a few years after this? He was young, 49 or
Yeah,
something.
he wasn't very old, and it was a sad case. He was not.
42.
Nobody that he thought he was going to get accolades from came to him and helped him or anything. He was abandoned because, there's no need for it. The deed was done, and they already took what they needed from him and left him behind.
Well, what happened to him? What was a sad case?
I think he died of cancer or something like that. It was not a good death. It was a young death.
Brutal. Okay, cool.
And he compared himself in his biography to Pontius Pilate.
Yes.
Really?
He knew his his fate. So sadly.
Really?
Sadly.
Wait, so Governor Tom Ford compared himself in his own biography to Pontius Pilate.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So when
can
you
find
think
the
about
quote.
it, he saw all this going on, whether or not he was actively involved, he saw that his acts put Joseph in a position to be killed. And there was no way for him to back away from that. He knew that. He saw that. And whether he had guilt or something for that, he called himself Pontius Pilate. So
Okay, so we're coming up here. Unfortunately, we only got 6 minutes left. We gotta start wrapping this up. But my mind is blown. I feel like I need to wrap a bandage around my noggin just to keep all of the new information in. So we've gone over. We're kind of remembering the martyrdom, for lack of a better term, by saying all the things that they don't talk about it enough. Is there anything super important that any of you have found in all of your historical study of the martyrdom where you just think, man, if people only knew this detail or this overlooked happening, if anybody knew this, they changed their mind on Joseph Smith?
So did we talk about the caucus?
The conspiracy of the different
Government issues, yes.
Just really quick, because this is the important part, is that why Carthage? Why was he taken to Carthage? Because that was the headquarters of the caucus. That is where the 23 delegates from the 26 states had met to plan the assassination of this political candidate.
Yeah, get more into that caucus. Like, okay, so you're using words like delegates. You're using words like caucus, which are very formalized political terms that insinuate hierarchy, predisposition, organization, and not just, mostly peaceful protesters who got a little bit trigger happy and iced the local religious leader. Okay. This almost seems like, I don't know, like a JFK conspiracy practically. Right. So actually, that's a good parallel we have to start making. Let's add that into the zeitgeist, right? So tell us more, Kimberly, about this conspiracy, this caucus. Was this like the CIA of 1844? What's going on?
Yeah, so they're basically representatives, top representatives of each state. They're coming together and they're saying, hey, listen, if we kill Joseph Smith, no one's going to go to jail for it. No one's going to be held accountable because we are trying to keep him from being president of the United States. And Stephen Markham, who's the Joseph Smith's bodyguard, actually, he overheard them conspiring because they were in the Hamilton Hotel, which was just a block away from Carthage. And he went to talk to Thomas Ford about something, and he hears them talking in this caucus about planning to kill Joseph Smith. And then there was kind of like they see Stephen Markham there. He insists to see the minutes of the meeting. And, there's a fight over the minutes. And then because in the minutes it's read, if we don't kill Joseph Smith now, he will be elected president. If he doesn't get elected president in 1844, he will get elected president in 1848. And so they needed to make sure he was killed before that happened.
Wow. So which do you think What do you think is the, I don't like saying the real reason because, that's such a cool internet term, like so-and-so wrecked by facts and logic, or the real reason X, Y, or Z thing happened. But if you had to say there were a real reason that is oftentimes overlooked in the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, would you say that it's the fear of his future presidency, not just the randomized, generalized fear of, this guy's getting too big in Illinois and local Illinois politicians just felt wary of him? You think there was actually a national scale conspiracy against this guy because they knew that Joseph Smith could take the presidency?
Well, what was Joseph Smith ultimately doing? He was building the kingdom of God. It's a political kingdom. Just like Jesus Christ came to establish a political kingdom. Yeah, and they were afraid of his political influence. That's the reason why the Roman government wanted Jesus Christ dead, was because of his political influence. And Joseph Smith was crowned king of Israel in the Council of 50. He's establishing the kingdom of God, a kingdom of priests and kings that are going to rule the world, that would subject all nations to the law of Zion. So he was killed because the enemies of the kingdom of God, right. the enemies of God killed him.
So if you would like a really good wrap up, Kimberly has a couple of slides here that really wraps this thing up.
Okay, hit it.
So it's starts with Kimberly. The death of Joseph Smith was under attack.
Yeah, what number is that?
Oh, okay.
That is 43.
Okay, cool. You guys do. I wish everybody at home could just totally see, like, these dudes came so boomer prepared. I loved it, dude. PowerPoint presentation, shirt and tie. Kimberly's got a freaking awesome water bottle. You know what I'm saying? Straight off of Etsy.
Cup. It's a sippy cup.
No, it's awesome. She's the most hydrated person I have interviewed all freaking day. Kimberly, you're a studette, So here, we're looking at number 43, right?
And Kimberly deserves to close this out. So
hit it. Right. Hit it.
And this is just to testify of the importance of the martyrdom, because at the end of the day, it is an assassination. It is a murder by friends. But the death of the prophet Joseph Smith is under attack by those who don't understand the importance of the restoration.
Yeah, that's the wrong PowerPoint presentation. Garden.
Oh, whoops! It
should be a blue background starting with.
It's the blue background one. Okay, cool. So the blue background one.
We gave you too much. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. We got it right here. Okay, so here's number 43 right here. Boom shakalaka.
Not seen it yet.
You're right. You're not seeing it yet. I'll edit this out, make it look better. Give me 2 seconds. Media player plus.
So while he's doing that, please recognize the huge value of Brian and Kimberly. They deserve our accolades here. They are powerful people who understand history and do amazing research.
Okay, awesome. So here you go. Here it is. The death of Joseph Smith is under attack by those who do not understand the importance of the restoration. The docudrama. Oh, wait, this is Who Killed Joseph Smith stuff. So you get to read it. Who wants to read it?
Just a tiny. I'm not going to talk about that, other than I believe that the docudrama Who Killed Joseph Smith does make a mockery of the deaths of Joseph and his brother Hiram. And if we reduce the martyrdom to a crime scene, it destroys the full value of the restoration. We know that in the latter days, the Lord chose his greatest prophet to rule over Israel. The work and mission of Joseph Smith have been known to all the holy prophets since the world began. He was known by both name and family to the ancient prophets who described his role in gathering Israel and bringing forth the Book of Mormon and attending to the canon of Scripture with personal revelations and in restoring other ancient scriptural texts. Every single prophet of dispensations past have surrounded the prophet Joseph Smith, dictating the great work that he would do. Such decrees had to be filled to the very letter, and so it has been. More prophecy was fulfilled in the lifetime of Joseph Smith than had been for nearly 2,000 years before, including his death. And I think it's important to understand that this is the one fact that I think dispels the inside job theory that Joseph Smith was killed by his friends, is that the Lord told Joseph Smith that thy days are known and thy years shall not be numbered less. in a prophecy given to him when he was in Liberty Jail.
Wait,
Meaning-
repeat that one. The Liberty Jail one. Repeat that phrase again.
In Liberty Jail, the Lord gave Joseph Smith this promise. He says, "Thy days are known, and thy years shall not be numbered less."
So Joseph came back from Liberty Jail knowing that he had about 5 years. In fact, he asked his father to give him another patriarchal bless, which he had promised him 5 years. And so...
Oh, wait, Joseph Smith and a patriarchal blessing
From his
had
father.
been from his father, was told he only had 5 years left?
Yes. And so...
Wait, where is that? How come I never heard that in Sunday school?
Well, have you read all of the discourses? Have you read all those? Most people don't read this stuff.
That's true. I'm a lazy learner. I'll admit it. No, I'm just kidding.
So if you look at the character of Joseph pre-liberty and post-liberty, you see a man in a hurry. You see a man who knows what he needs to get done, and he was dreading whether or not he had enough time. So if you listen to some of the comments he made, finally when he had got all the priesthood over to the 12 and got them on his shoulder, he says, "I've now laid it on to you." What was the exact quote, Brian?
But
then
something like that, yeah.
and he's just he's
rolled this off. Yeah.
right. So he's now relieved that he knows I could die, which I know I will, and the church will go on. So he's done the new and everlasting covenant. He started the plural marriage. He started everything. Even he couldn't wait for the temple. He did it in the red brick store. But he was a man at least at ease with his fate. Not that he wanted to do that, and he couldn't get it across to Emma when he was trying to say goodbye to her. He knew he was saying goodbye forever, and she kept saying, "No, you'll come back. You always come back." Well, he didn't come back.
Wow, that is hardcore, man.
Yep.
All right, so who's ending this, man? Who's got a good last liner? Like I hate to bring up, this is such a stupid millennial thing, but like, at the end of like Mortal Kombat where they're like, "Finish him." And then there's like a really cool like one-liner, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but like, I don't know, a little bit more tasteful because we are talking about, Nauvoo and the ultimate Chad and the freaking conspiracy that failed. So what's the big takeaway for the audience, man? What's the big takeaway?
The biggest takeaway for the audience is Joseph Smith's own words that he said to one of his plural wives, Mary Elizabeth Rollins Lightner. He said, quote, "I have to seal my testimony with my blood. I have to do it. For this work will never progress until I am gone. For the testimony is of no force until the testator is dead." So ultimately, Joseph Smith, he sealed his testimony with his blood. He sealed the covenant of the restoration to this dispensation by not only his blood, but the blood of his brother, Hiram.
Yeah, and if you remember the last couple of days, he tried so hard to get his brother to go to Cincinnati, take his family and leave, because he knew he was going to death. He didn't want his brother to do that, but it was also important for his brother to be part of that martyrdom. So
wow. Oh, geez, man.
That is the ultimate love. Joseph Smith gave his life for his church, for his people. He knew that until he was gone, that the saints would also have trouble. And so he gave up his life for the gospel, for the restoration.
And Hiram, dude, he's a Chad too. He knew. Did Hiram know he was going to die, or is he thinking, I'm able to fight my way out of this?
Yeah. So you need to just see what page he turned down in the Book of Mormon when he was there in Carthage. So I think they both
Which
knew.
I have seen. By the way, have you seen that Book of Mormon? Reed Moon has it.
Oh, cool.
Reed Moon has the Book of Mormon and it's so interesting because it ended up getting sold from Hiram Smith to like Newell K. Whitney to another guy that left Missouri, gave it to, he owned a couple of slaves when they were freed. And the family of legal slaves actually said, he always really kind of just treated us more like a tenant, not as slaves. He was a very good man. And when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, he actually gave us very fine linens and silverware and wished us luck. He was practically like family, I guess, at that point. And they moved to Chicago where like for 4 or 5 generations, their family Bible that they maintained was actually that original Book of Mormon that had like 5 or 6 generations of their family history. But then through several generations of like only children, that family line basically came to an end, and the last person organized the sale of this first edition after having tried to give it to the Library of Congress. But back then in the early 60s, the Library of Congress was so racist they wouldn't take it. You know what I'm saying? But no joke, it ends up getting sold on the private market and with the sale, the family insisted that the pictures and the daguerreotypes and the family history of all of the African-American family that had owned it for like those 5 or 6 generations stays with the book, because that's their family history. And what's so crazy is, just like it says in the Doctrine and Covenants, that he had turned to the Book of Mormon and folded the page. When you open up Hiram Smith's Book of Mormon, you could go to that page and sure it is folded in right there. And it's like, oh, it gives you chills, baby. It gives you chills. But apparently it doesn't give Kimberly chills, because she's already checking her cell phone to see if Joe Biden called her back. But no, I'm just kidding.
We're probably making Kimberly late for work.
Yeah,
she
dude,
stayed
for real.
In here.
So this is awesome. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Kimberly,
Thanks,
Brian,
Curtis.
Shannon, where can people find you? If they want to find your stuff, if they want to follow more of you, where can they find you? Kimberly, you go first.
I have a YouTube channel, Remaining True to the Restoration.
Okay, cool. Rock on. Brian.
We have a historical property in Nauvoo, and people can find a lot of information on it by going to martyrdomstories.com.
Okay. Rock on. And Shannon, hit us, my man. Hit us.
We have a channel that's just getting stood up. It started 2 years ago, and we had a bit of an interruption. It's called Voices of the Restoration, and its whole purpose is to testify of the truth from the voices of those who restored it.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has been real, and it has been fun. It has been real fun, guys. As always, for this and more, please make sure you guys check us out at WardRadio.com.
How about the car in the driver's seat? I pick you up, but there's only room for